Thank you for coming back, because obviously the graveyard shift. I know that the media industry is known for escaping to the pub after these sessions, and I hope I don't stand in your way. And I really look forward to making this an engagement session. Thank you for pronouncing my name so correctly, by the way. For those of you who are expecting a lady with my first name, I come from the Netherlands, the only country in the world where Dorus is not a girl's name. And one last thing, I used to be the interim CEO of OzTam last year, but we've got our CEO here, Karen Halligan, as well. So, I'm here today to talk about the latest innovation in video measurement, more specifically BVOD programmatic. And can I get a show of hands, who of you have heard of VOD streaming? Great, I see someone waiting there. That's actually really fantastic to see so many people having heard of it. What I'm here today to share with you is an introduction into VOD streaming, because we have shared a little bit about VOD streaming in the past. We've been quite cautious around sharing too much about it, because we really wanted to make sure that we could actually do this, knowing that it is such a large industry collaboration initiative with so many different parties involved. So what I would like to share with you today is an introduction into VOD streaming, the definition, what it is also not explicitly, to make it really clear. I'm going to explain to you the BVOD ID, which is central to the solution. It is a common identifier across participating networks that allows us to stitch together the way of buying that inventory programmatically. So we'll talk through that, how we do that across 7, 9, 10, and SBS as participating broadcasters. And then we'll walk through how it works end to end. And finally, I'll share the timelines. So we've been working diligently in the background, and today is the first time that we're going to share a little bit more about when we're going to launch this. So let's talk about VOD streaming. So starting off with the definition in the headline, I thought I'd share this really and let you read through it. VOD streaming is introducing a cross-broadcaster programmatic BVOD trading solution based on a consistent BVOD ID, and that is an identifier that we as OzTam have had for many, many years. But this is the first time that we are disclosing it externally, and we're doing that in an encrypted way to protect the integrity of our data. And we're building on existing SSP, DSP, and broadcaster processes. Now, very important here, because when we first launched this idea, we actually called it the BVOD Marketplace. Who have heard about the BVOD Marketplace? Yeah. So what we learned through that was that the BVOD Marketplace had this connotation around a central place where you brought everything together and a user interface or a system that you could then access. But the reality is that we're just passing through additional data that are going to enable these beautiful use cases that I'll share in a minute. So existing broadcaster, SSP, and DSP processes passing new data sets. So what does that mean in terms of the scope? Well, starting at the bottom left, as soon as someone initiates a stream on 7+, 9 Now, 10 Play, or SBS On Demand, we see someone pinging OzTam for their demographic. And for every person, we've got a BVOD ID that sits in our system. As I said, we've had that for years, but this is the first time that we're going to expose this externally in the bit stream. We're going to do that in a real-time fashion. So up until now, we did that overnight, and this is a huge shift for OzTam, because obviously it requires that real-time responsiveness, and we've tested that over the past months, and we see the results that are very promising. Obviously, we need to do that because of the real-time nature of programmatic BVOD. We're doing that also in a privacy-first manner, which means that when someone opts out of personalized marketing, we will not pass the demo, and therefore you will be served a more generic ad that is obviously still going to be served to you, but without the personalization. If you go to the second row, this is the first time that we're going to be able to activate on co-viewing. Co-viewing has been a huge topic in the industry for many, many years, and by being able to know exactly who's watching what, where, and how, we can determine the number of co-viewers. We know that that is on average about 1.6 in the industry based on our robust modeling. And therefore, we then duplicate the bid request and increase the reach of the people that are watching on a connected TV. When we did a piece of work around the voice of the customer all the way at the start of this project, the request from the industry was, can you please include advertiser first-party data matching? So we have included that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we are going to do that, again in a privacy-compliant manner. Deduplicated reach and frequency management is one of the building blocks and one of the key drivers for this, for you as buyers, as agencies, because now by having that central identifier, you're going to be able to target your audiences in a deduplicated manner across 7, 9, 10, and SBS, which is a huge piece of efficiency, as you can imagine. And then we'll be able to report on that through the existing gold standard certified tools that are out there. Really happy to see some of those providers in the room here today. So think about Lansbury & James, TechEdge, TV Map, and Day8, as well as OzTam with the RNF portal. So what does that mean in terms of key benefits? Well, first of all, we're going to be able to provide a huge amount of scalability here in a premium, brand-safe environment that is supported by the currency being VOS that we're launching officially on the 29th of December. We see these buyer efficiencies coming through because of, obviously, the standard common demographics that we use as OzTam that are going to be applied across all of the different networks and all the different agencies buying against those demographics. I've talked about the deduplicated audiences and the frequency capping that you can do off the back of that, which I think is a huge piece of efficiency there. And the co-viewing for the first time to be able to activate and monetize against that, increasing your reach, because we know that these people are actually watching the programs, and we can also differentiate by genre and by different programs, so we know there's higher levels of co-viewing. Campaign reach and frequency, and the reporting there of BVOD as incremental to TV. Now, arguably, you could do that today for your direct campaigns, but you couldn't do that currently for your programmatic BVOD campaigns, and that is what we are introducing as part of this new initiative. And then finally, the advertiser first-party data matching at the request of the industry included in the scope of this delivery. Now, very importantly here in the kicker, we are going to introduce this as a new way of working. Whilst we still continue to support the existing ways of working, we have a very strong belief that the benefits that you see on the right-hand side of the slide here are going to attract people to want to use the data that will pass in the bid stream. But for those that prefer to use other identifiers that are out there in the market or existing ways of working, that will continue to be supported as well. So you've got optionality and freedom of choice. So in order to really make this clear, we thought we'd just articulate what it is versus what it is not, just to make it really clear for everyone. So what it is an industry-wide data enablement service for managing deduplicated reach and frequency for programmatic BVOD only. What it is not, and what the BVOD marketplace alluded to, it is not a transactional platform that you go to. It's not a system that you can access with pooled inventory across the broadcasters. It enables the benefits that we talked about earlier on the previous slide using that single identifier, the BVOD ID. And that BVOD ID is available for all of the participating broadcasters. If you're not a participating broadcaster at this stage, we welcome you. So we have welcomed all of the broadcasters previously, and we continue to welcome them. And some of them are on that journey from a technology perspective to be able to participate in VOS streaming, which is fantastic. So we expect growth in this space going forward. But if you're not going through that, obviously, then you can't use the data because that is what the technology allows. It provides broadcasters the control of their own programmatic inventory and their pricing structures. Now, we, as OzTam, are not allowed to talk about any of the pricing or the commercials between the various participating broadcasters. And therefore, we leave that to each of the broadcasters and their agencies independently. And that means that agencies will have direct deals, as they do today, with each of the independent networks. It's therefore not a fixed pricing or a controlled inventory regime. A new way to be transacted, and you continue to have access to the existing ways of working, and therefore we're not forcing you down any path here to go through this way of working. It's complementary to what you have today. And then finally, a very open and inclusive approach that we've taken to this, because when we started this project, and I've seen quite a few of the SSPs and DSPs in the room here as well today, We engaged with the entire market. And we asked who would be willing and able to participate in this initiative. And we engaged about 10 different SSPs and 10 different DSPs on top of all of the broadcasters, all of the agencies, and all of the third-party software suppliers. So you can just see the plethora of different stakeholders that we've engaged with for this project. Off the back of that, we've selected 2 launch partners as SSPs and 2 launch partners as DSPs that I'll come to in a second. So, the BVOD ID that is central to this solution. Let me talk you through how it all works, because as we have here in this example based on the use case, Mitch, who's a male 26-year-old, watching the Matildas on 7, watching The Block on 9 Now, watching Survivor on 10 Play, and then Alone on SBS. We see Mitch with different identifiers, as you can see, because on some of the networks he's known as a 26-year-old, others as a 27, and back to what Ian Garland said, we can't control if someone says I was born on the 1st of January 2000, and therefore it raises the question, who is Mitch? So what we as OzTam do is that we model all the data from the registration data that we get from all of the networks, and we combine that with what people are watching, how they're watching it, and when they're watching it, and we put that into the demographic modeling of OzTam and RegStam in order to come out with relative certainty in this case that this is Mitch, who is a male 26-year-old. And we allocate a single BVOD identifier to Mitch. So what that allows us to do is then to still respect the integrity of each of the network's own identifiers, but we've got a central identifier within OzTam that allows us to see that this is the same person. And this is also what we are going to pass in the bitstream. Because let me show you how this works then from a process perspective. So here's Mitch at the top, watching Survivor on 10 Play on his connected TV. And as soon as he initiates the stream, 10 Play calls the OzTam real-time demo service. And we as OzTam then return the BVOD ID together with the demographics, being the male 26-year-old, to the broadcasters. The broadcasters in turn, via Google Ad Manager, pass that to Magnite and Xandr as the SSPs. So there's your insight in terms of who our launch partners are from an SSP perspective. And then the SSPs pass it on to the DSPs, which are Xandr and the Trade Desk, and they then bid on that opportunity to serve that ad. And the highest paying bid gets served as an ad, in this case a car ad, on the connected TV. And while that ad is being served, we then see that the DSPs log that in their impression files with the timestamp, with the publisher, and they can then share that with the agency so they can then upload that to the third-party software suppliers for the RNF reporting. Does that make sense? I see some nods. So that's how it works end to end. And so we've worked with all of those parties over the last months in order to test the pipes, and I can already share with you that all of that works. So it's really exciting to get to this point, because we know that as we pass this in real time and as we share that from broadcasters to SSPs to DSPs, and now we are in the stage of testing this with the agencies, that all of the end-to-end processes actually flow. So what does that mean? Well, that means that Mitch, 26-year-old, can be reached and can be frequency capped across 7, 9, 10, and SBS, and across the various devices that he uses. Yeah? So in addition to that as a standard VOD streaming deal, we also have the advertiser first-party data deal that I mentioned that the industry requested. And so when we looked at that, we said, well, how do we match the broadcaster data over here, which we already collect as OzTam as part of the registration process, and how do we match that with the advertiser's first-party data? And the way we've constructed that is to find a clean room environment, for which we've selected Snowflake. We've gone through an extensive RFP process whereby we had about 8 different providers, and Snowflake came out as the most suitable party in this to support that use case. And so Snowflake will help us to bring together the data points, and we've got 3 different use cases off the back of that. One is that you'll be able to match your advertiser first-party data. You'll be able to suppress your advertiser first-party data in case you're looking for new customers. It was interesting to see the use case from BYD earlier today, where advertiser first-party data plays such a critical role for them. And then we'll also be able to share lookalike models, where people are saying, I already know my clients, but actually I want people like them, and expand my reach that way. All of this will then also be activated through the DSPs for targeting. So there's integration happening on many fronts. So with that, obviously everybody is always curious to hear, when are we going to get this? And we are going to continue the testing as we stand here right now. So I've got a brief timeline whereby here we are today at the IAB conference, and really glad to share with you that we have done all of this testing, and we're in the final stages of it with the agencies to make sure that everything works end to end. A few more use cases for us to smoothen out before the end of the year. And when we first communicated about VOS streaming, we said we will launch this in Q4 2024. And I'm glad to say that we are sticking to that timeline. And right now we've got a soft launch on the 25th of November 2024, just before the silly season, which means that hopefully we'll be able to get a few deals through that. And our expectation is that we'll then ramp up in 2025 with further iterations around, for example, additional SSPs that will come on board, because we've got the 2 and the 2 right now. But many of them are currently knocking on our door saying, can we please be part of this? Because we see the benefits, and our agencies and clients also see the benefits of it. So that is what will happen in the new year, with additional use cases, additional partners, and hopefully additional benefits for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dankjewel.
Alsjeblieft.
There is one question in Slido for you, sir, which is, can you dig in a little bit more about co-viewing? Is that something that's done utilizing the Regio data, or is it sort of a multiplier, leveraging the, yep?
Yeah, so there's a model that we use for the co-viewing, whereby we're using various data points, whereby, for example, we've got 8,500 meters panel homes that we use. And those panel homes, you should imagine that as a TV that sits there with a little box on it. And in there, we can have up to 4 co-viewers. And so when people log on there as a panel home, they might say, okay, I'm watching it together with my wife and my 2 kids, and everybody gets logged in. And that's how we know, based on that streaming, like, oh, there's multiple people viewing that. And that is a modeled set of data of 8,500 homes, which is more than what most countries have worldwide, interestingly enough, that we use in order to have a representative sample. That gets overlaid with 16 million streams per month that we collect as OzTam in order to then also further model that. And we've also got streaming TV meters going into all of those homes in addition to avoid any of that deduplication. So there's a really robust model across that allows us to then, with relative certainty, say this is about 1.6 on average of the co-viewers that we know that are watching any content at any point in time, with differentiation across genres, as I said earlier. Right. Because if you look at, for example, the Olympics that we just had, there will be a higher rate of co-viewing than there is on other programs that are less attractive to watch as a family, for example.
So that differentiator is based upon the viewing data that you see rather than any external...
Correct.
Okay.
We use our own data, which we get from the sample homes. Yep. That is representative of the Australian population.
Perfect, great answer, thank you. Do we have another answer in the crowd? Oh, we do, there we go. Oh, really? How am I the reach and frequency data that you get from the log files and your process, is that in real time or is there a lag?
There is a lag, it's overnight. Yes, so what happens is that the DSP will then collect all of the impression files and then shares that with the agency, and then overnight you get to see the results the next day.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? Yes?
Is there an opportunity to bring non-broadcast television networks into this rating service as well?
Yes. So we are looking as OzTam to really share our data as widely as we can. And therefore, we are in active conversations with streaming services in order to see how we can actually welcome them in the mix. because obviously as the world is changing around us, it used to be linear TV, or I should call it broadcast TV nowadays. But as we see streaming services being complementary to that, we welcome all of those different providers. And like I said, we've got active conversations happening with the usual suspects. Yes. Yes.
I might have missed it before, but the data that you're able to provide to the buyers, that's the basic demo data. You're also seeing categories of viewing and high consumption, low consumption. Are you selling other sorts of data as well too, or is it just that demo data which creates the user ID?
So as part of the VOS streaming solution, we are just passing the demo, the session ID, and the BVOD ID. But as OzTam, we obviously sit on a mountain of data, and therefore there's also other conversations that we have as OzTam in order to monetize the data that we have. Yes. But for VOS streaming, it is the session ID, the BVOD ID, and the demographics in real time. Yes.
This might sound like a silly question, but you talked about the RNF model rendering overnight to give you that result. Where is that result? Does it sit in the DSP? Are you submitting data every day from your BVOD and linear? Where is that coming up? Is it through software?
It is through software. So the way we currently report in VOS is that we have third-party software suppliers like, actually, lady that is sitting right next to you. And they provide gold standard certified solutions based on the calculations that we prescribe as OzTam. And that means that they get the data from OzTam, from Nielsen, from all the various parties that collect the data overnight, and they process that. And then it's the likes of TV Map, Lansbury & James, TechEdge, and Day8 that will then be the ones that will serve you the details of how the reach and frequency has been generated for that specific campaign. So it's that software solution that gives you the answer.
And that will be available daily?
That will be available daily. Good.
Oh, one more, last one for you,
Yes.
Tim.
Follow up on the, thank you very much. Follow up on the usual suspects. Two-part question. Is there any chance any of them will also be on board by the 25th of November? And if there are barriers, are they more technical or financial, commercial, please?
Yeah, really good question. And I wish I could say yes. I would love to be in a position where we can actually welcome some of them already before the 25th of November. If only you knew how many different stakeholders we had to get to this point. My honest answer would be that it is unlikely that additional ones would come on board before. I mean, we're 10 weeks away. So we are celebrating the fact that we are going live and that we're being able to get the industry together because this is a great example of not just innovation but collaboration on behalf of the industry. I do expect that additional ones will come on board in 2025 based on those active conversations. And to answer your second question, it is more a question of technical integration and more specifically the ability to log a session ID than it is any other commercial or other restrictions because we've got the doors wide open for everyone to participate in this as long as they protect the data that we pass through because obviously that is also something that as OzTam we are very keen to make sure that that doesn't go everywhere into all kinds of models. But it is more from a technical perspective than commercial or operational.
Fantastic, Doris. Thank you so much. A round of applause.